Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Unsustainable Wednesdays on a Wednesday. Believe it or not.
On a Wednesday.
On a Wednesday. I want to make an emphasis of that here. Okay, so a lot to go over. This might be the last Unsustainable Wednesday of the season. Surprise, surprise.
We're getting there.
We're getting there because as the season goes on, unsustainable just becomes a little bit less relevant because when you're looking forward at who's unsustainably high, you kind of maybe want that unsustainability, So I think especially starting with this episode, maybe we'll still have it next week, TBD on, I haven't really looked at the schedule, but we probably still will do it next week, but I'm like 99% sure we will. But one thing...
I think next week is...
I think next week is
at
the last.
At least in our leagues, it's the last regular season week,
yeah.
I think.
So I think next week is the last unsustainable week. We'll probably switch Wednesday to like a simple, okay, who are we eyeing for the rest of the week type of thing to help you out with playoffs and that sort of thing. It starts to kind of simplify. So the thing with Unsus at this point of the season and this juncture, you really need to take our suggestions at Unsustainably High and whatnot as guys that we do like still, right? They're still good. You're obviously not going to drop them. All we're trying to say is, hey, their numbers look really
I would drop
whack.
Potentially 2 of the guys on my list.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean,
go ahead.
I have 3 guys here who I wouldn't drop, especially given schedule, but the point of the show is to make you aware of, hey, these guys are unsustainably high. I'm just letting you know. It doesn't mean drop them. It doesn't mean they're useless. It doesn't mean they serve no purpose. It just means, hey, here's a warning on them, just so you know. It doesn't mean you got to do anything. It's just
I hate all the guys on my list.
You always do. You always hate the guys
on every section of it.
You hate that you had to write their name down. It required effort.
Even the Sustainably High guys.
Burned calories. You hate them for it. So let's start off then, and rightfully so. My first one is Gabriel Landeskog, because, of course, we start with the best team in the National Hockey League. Unsustainably high for a few reasons. So one, his shooting percentage is absolutely ridiculous and has been for a while now. So his shots are still really high. That being said, I mean, he's really just outperforming by the span of maybe, 2 goals, essentially. So really he's scoring 2 more goals than expected. So it's not that big of a deal. Where things do get a little bit weirder with Landeskog is his IPP. It's really high these last 21 games. 16 games. These last 16 games, his IPP is at like 72%. So he's being involved in way more points than usual. His IPP on the season itself this year is actually, as a whole, in line with what he was last year and in some years past. But right now it's sitting at about 70-ish%. So, 10 percentage points higher than normal. That, to me, I think can come down a little bit. So all I'm saying with Landeskog right now is, and I traded for him. Full disclosure that I traded for Landeskog. So I do like him a lot and still like him rest of season. But you do need to kind of adjust your expectations. And when you're trading for him, I traded for him assuming he's probably like a point per game guy. Maybe just above that. But right now he's operating at a 110 point pace about. That I am not expecting. So if you're going into it, with your expectations properly set, you'll be fine, whether you're trading for him or just acquired him. You did fine. Just want to alert people that, like, when he slows down, it's going to be okay. If he slows down, who knows at this point? I mean, he just keeps getting crazier because Colorado's ridiculous. But yeah, when that happens, don't freak out too much. If it happens, he'll be all right. But he's just producing at a ridiculous clip right now.
Yeah. I like Landeskog.
I love Landeskog.
I'm hoping he can stay up around 70%.
Yeah,
but
same.
Historically, not really the case.
Yeah, I
can see it though for the type of player he is.
He's interesting because I acquired him in my keeper league, and he wasn't kept this last season, and he was traded to me because they weren't keeping him. He did have 60-ish point season last year, or 60-ish point pace last season, right?
Yeah,
so like he wasn't that incredible from a points perspective. But yeah, I don't know. He's working his way into keeper territory for me now. It's interesting.
For sure.
He's ridiculous. I mean, my team is pretty nuts, so that's the only reason why. I mean, in most teams, I would say, yes, he's going to be a keeper, but for me, he is making my decision. Like, do I keep Landeskog or Patches? It'll be an interesting choice at the end of the season.
So my first one is Ivan Provorov. So he's on here for a couple of reasons. I think the natural instinct for a lot of people, especially that already roster Provorov, is to be super excited that Ghost is waived. Again, we're recording this Tuesday night, so don't really know what that outcome would be if he somehow clears waivers, which I honestly do not expect. I think he still cycles in and out of the lineup, and they can throw him on taxi squad here and there to save on cap space. But I assume he's gone, and so you're going to have a better chance of Provorov staying power play 1. The problem is we've had plenty of times when Ghost was not playing, and still Provorov was not getting power play 1. We saw Gustafsson get it sometimes. We've seen them try different things up there. Sanheim has gotten attempts, maybe not this season, but the problem is that even when Provorov is top power play, it doesn't matter much. He played all season last season on top power play. He went up with a 19 power play point pace, which was good for about half of his points. He was on a 43 point pace. That's not very good for a power play 1 defenseman. That puts him on like the bottom tier of power play 1 defenseman. And the fact of the matter is, in my humble opinion, he's just not that good of an offensive defenseman. He's a good defenseman. He's a good all-around defenseman, but I don't think he's the one that you want quarterbacking. And I've said this in other episodes as well. I think the reason for that is actually you can just see it. Just look at his historical IPP, right? His individual points percentage, the amount of goals that are on the ice when he's on the ice that he's a part of. So either got a goal and assist, he would get credited for that. You see elite defensemen around the 50% mark in that category. Provorov, even with top power play deployment, gets about 35%, and that's consistent from year to year. So I don't see how we're going to see a huge shift in that, and he needs a big shift in that. That's if he can get that to elite player numbers, that 50% mark, we'd see him, closer to 60 points, which is as good as it gets basically for most defensemen. I don't see that happening, and the shot increase is nice, but there's not a whole lot there's not a lot of reasoning why that's happening. He's actually getting less offensive zone starts. So the fact that he has, over 300 shot pace over the last 2 weeks, I can't fathom why it would stay like that. There's just nothing showing me here that his shots per 60 should triple, or double at least. So fun. Maybe he's a bit better than he was rest of the season, but I don't think anybody should be expecting a significantly improved Provorov from here on out.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, even with the waiver of Gostisbehere, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if he doesn't get claimed, I'm assuming he's not getting claimed, honestly. His contract is not great. I don't know.
It's 4.5. It's not that bad.
Yeah, but it is pretty bad, though. I mean, 4.5 for 2 years. I think it's the term that's going to scare teams. I don't think it's the amount. I think it's the term of 2 years.
2 years is fine. It's not like it's 6 years or something.
It's tough. That's still not great, depending on what happens with the cap here too. Which
I would bet he gets claimed. We'll see.
You would assume that if there's a player that was ever going to get claimed, it'd be Gostisbehere. I would think. I mean, can't think of a player as kind of impactful as him going on waivers in a while.
He's like a pretty good defenseman that just is just the whipping boy for some reason.
There was someone better. Wasn't Louis Eriksson waived at one point? Elite.
Wasn't Corey Perry waived? Hart Trophy winning Corey Perry.
True. A lot of maybe there's bigger names than I remember. So my next person here on Unsustainably High.
What are we talking about?
Danny Healy. Ooh, interesting. Do people love or hate him now? I don't know how his legacy.
I don't think people remember him that are listening to us at this point.
I don't know what his legacy is at this point. My next one here is Martin Necas on Unsustainably High. This one is solely because of one reason. I mean, there are obviously, the shooting percentage is ridiculous for him. It just makes absolutely no sense, although he was a high percentage shooter last year, the on-ice shooting, all that stuff aside, and his IPP being 90% over his last,
why wouldn't it be
16-ish games or whatever. Yeah, aside from all that, the thing that puts him on Unsustainably High for me the most is the fact that his minutes have gone up a lot as of late. You can almost see exactly when his minutes spiked, and it was when Trocheck was out. So now that Trocheck's back, I would very much expect Natchez to go back down from what he's seeing now, which is more like the 21-minute range. I think he's going to go back down to around that 18-minute range. The reason is because Carolina right now can run 3 very, very good lines. They can have the Aho line, the Svech-Trocheck line, and then they can have the Natchez line. That's essentially what they're doing tonight not the Aho line. The Aho line, the Trocheck line, and the Aho line has Natchez on it, and then you have kind of the Stahl line. So those are 3 lines. And then remember, we've talked about this before, that the Stahl line is very effective just at what they do for real life, not for fantasy purposes. So now that that's back, I would expect more of a split. And if you look at tonight's game, his first Trocheck's first game back, they're playing against Chicago, evenly split down the board, 24% for each of those 3 lines. So that's what I would expect going forward. So because Martin Natchez's minutes will go down, I think we'll see a lot of other things come down as a result as well. So that's the biggest reason why he's on this Unsustainably High section.
There's one thing I'd like to note about Natchez, and one of the concerns we had with Trocheck coming back was him losing his top power play slot, which he did not. Interestingly, I thought what would happen is we'd see one of Natchez or Stahl get bumped for Trocheck, and what we actually see is neither of them did. Trocheck wound up power play 2, which honestly, as a Trocheck rostered GM, that's sort of
not great, but
not
we'll
great.
See.
We'll see what happens going forward. I have a feeling that Stahl will get bumped eventually.
That's what I think,
but maybe
too.
not. Stahl's good at the faceoff dot, so
We'll see.
Okay, my next one, and I feel like this name is probably starting to pop up given his recent deployment, but obviously deserves mention, is Noel Acciari. Now, Acciari winds up on Unsustainably High once a season almost with a bullet. Like, he always does something. Last season, it was his, I think it was like 2 games where he got a hat trick, at least one. It was like, and all of a sudden, he's great, right? He's a guy who hits a lot, who also gets 3,000 points a game. It's insane. No. Acciari's in a good position for the time being with Barkov out. However, it seems like Barkov will be back soon, which obviously limits Acciari's upside. But Acciari's also not seeing like much power play time at all with Barkov out, unsurprisingly. However, he is cashing in on the power play anyway. That's definitely not going to keep up. So I think what we're seeing right now with his point production against his lack of power play and his really high IPP for him, he's like a 55% guy sitting at 80 over the last week or so. Everything points downwards. Even if Barkov stays out, I think what you're really getting is a solid hitter and blocker, surprisingly good blocker for a forward, maybe one of the best in the league actually, but not much else. He's on 100. He gets defenseman block numbers. I'm only like really realizing this now looking at our toolkit. But last season he was on 128 block pace. This season he's on 125, and over the last 2 weeks he's on 199. Those are not just defenseman block numbers; they're good defenseman block numbers. It's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that about Acciari. You know why? Because I stay away from Acciari, which.
Yeah, but now, like,
But
seeing this now, like, if you need
it's
a
because of-
face-off winning,
It's because of
hitting,
Barkov.
blocking forward
It's because of
for some
Barkov.
reason.
As soon as Barkov's back, he goes back to nothing.
No, but his block
yeah.
pace is on the season.
It's on the
So-
season, it's 125. I mean,
That's really, really,
it is really
good
good for a
forward.
forward. I agree. I agree. It
So
is.
what I'm saying here is I think oftentimes in a matchup, you'll wind up in a situation where there's no good defenseman when you're chasing hits and blocks at the end of the week. And I feel like Acciari actually might come to mind now for me.
Potentially.
But
I don't hate it, at least. Makes sense.
yeah.
My last one here is going to be someone that was a really good pickup for this week, and that's Paul Stastny. So you don't want to be dropping him. But just know he's crazy unsustainable. I mean, his IPP is really high for coming out season. Granted, yes, his minutes are up, and he's playing a very different role now. But at the end of the day, I just don't see this point per game pace continuing. I think he's more of like a 60-ish, 65 point guy. I think that's much more reasonable. I think specifically this last week that we've seen out of Stastny has been about as perfect as you could get. The other thing that I'll mention about Stastny that I'm not really liking actually over these last 30 days, very high secondary assist rate. On the season, he's at a 42%. So he's kind of come back down to earth on the season as a whole. As a whole, he's back to kind of where you'd expect. But if you look at the last 30 days, his secondary assist rate is 80%. So 80% of the assists he's gotten are secondary. Now, granted, that's only 4 of 5. That's still significant, though. That still matters. And that's where, a lot of his points are coming from. Then you look at his goals. He has 7 goals to his expected goals for 4. So in a lot of ways, he's getting lucky and outperforming what he should be. So I still think he can be like a 60-point guy because he's on that good line. And we've seen players in the past also do well when they're put in that situation. But overall, unsustainably high.
Yep. My last one is Samuel Girard, going back to Colorado for a minute. Now, Girard is interesting, but not for this season, I think. Although, who am I to say? He's been on a 70-point season, 70-point pace this season for some reason, some inexplicable reason where that is his. It's mainly his IPP jumping and getting decent power play points with Makar out. Now that Makar's back, I think we're going to see his points drop back off, not being deployed on top power play anymore. I don't have a way to defend his current point pace, essentially. We're talking about a guy who was on a 40-point pace last season. He's got some more ice time, but really not enough to justify this jump. And it's really a decent move in on-ice shooting that's changing things, but I think he needs more to be able to sustain this. He's actually being deployed defensively more than he was last season as well. I think this is just kind of, I don't know. He's got more goals than he should, obviously, but with 5 and expected 2, considering he doesn't even shoot much. But all of his metrics point to somebody who should be more like a 40 to 45 point pace. I think I've said on plenty of occasions that it's extremely difficult for a defenseman to put up anywhere north of half a point per game, and even getting half a point per game for a defenseman that's not getting power play 1 exposure is pretty tough on a given season. He's clearly going to do it this season, but I don't think that means that he can sustain this for the rest of the season if he's not getting top power play deployment on a team that has such a good top power play.
Agreed. Okay, let's move into unsustainably low. I'm going to start off first with a really easy one in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. The reason he's down right now is almost entirely because he's been taken off of that McDavid line. And I really do think that they're going to have to put that line back.
After tonight's game.
Especially after tonight's game and just in general. That being said, he has struggled in general for a while now. I think the Oilers in general, though, have struggled. I don't think it's necessarily... I don't think you can just point the fingers at just him. I think it's mostly the Oilers and his shooting percentage also coming down. But I think overall, he'll be better. I just don't know what that ceiling is anymore. I think he'll certainly be better from what we're seeing now. I just don't know anymore where that ceiling is because it seems like we're back to the Oilers circus of nothing's working. What can we do? Oh, wait, we don't have enough depth. Do we just put them all together? They have plenty of depth. Don't worry. Depth, though, they have none of. So lots of depth, not enough depth. That's a hard sentence to say. Say that 5 times fast.
It's just officially changed their names to the Reapers or something.
That'd be a cool rebrand.
The first round pick Reapers.
There you
go. I'm going to stay in Colorado because apparently that's all I want to talk about and go to Nazem Kadri for my first one here. I also had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but Kadri is sort of doing the inverse of what Girard's doing. He is seeing top power play, although he has been shifting on and off with Donskoy. How can you avoid to play Donskoy given how strong he's been lately? But Kadri is doing a lot of things right. He's a little short on his expected goals for the season, which is uncommon for him, actually. So, I mean, you'll see that reflected in his shooting percentage, which is down 40% on the year. Everything else kind of seems in line for a player who should do pretty well. You know, he plays a bumper spot on the power play there. So even when he's power play 1, he's not going to rack up points, but he is going to get some significant benefit from being there, which he is seeing, but he hasn't seen over the last couple of weeks. So I think we're going to see the power play points come back. His shots are still in good shape. He's lost a little bit of ice time, but nothing to really be concerned about. So I think that if you're a Kadri owner, there's no need to panic. I would not be dropping him or anything crazy like that, despite the fact he's on a 60-point pace. Despite the fact he's below his 60-point pace, although I wouldn't consider Kadri much more than about a 60 to 65 point pace player anyway. So you have to bear that in mind. Although, he does give you the shots, he gives you okay hits, and he takes pims here and there. So he's got extra benefits. Depending on your league.
My next one here, similar type of player, I guess, build-wise, Vladimir Tarasenko. Maybe not height. I actually don't know how tall they are. I kind of want to know. Is their height unsustainable?
I'm pretty sure Tarasenko's taller.
I'm pretty sure Tarasenko's taller. I don't know, but they're both a little thick.
For some reason,
they're both
a
little thick, though. You know what I mean?
I think that Kadri's short, and I don't know why.
Me too. I think that all the time.
He's not short. He's 6 feet tall.
I'm glad it wasn't just me thinking it. I don't know why. He just looks short on the ice. I don't mean it in a mean way. Just like he looks shorter. I don't know why. I've always assumed that Kadri's kind of short, but he's not.
He's
it's
not.
Just weird. I don't know why. I don't know if I always thought that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if 6 feet tall is short or not for the average NHLer.
No, it's tall for me.
They're the same height exactly.
Wow,
right.
Really? So I was right. They are similar build. Look at that. Eye test. So Vladimir Tarasenko, in so many ways, is unsustainably low at the moment. Crazy low shooting percentage. He's at 5% on the season since coming back. He was a 12% shooter last year. His shooting pace is just as good as it was. I have no worries. It's actually up from last year, so that's all fine. Everything looks in line for Tarasenko. His minutes are way up from last year too. Like I am extremely excited about Tarasenko. If I were you, I really do think Tarasenko could be a big buy low. I know that the Blues are in trouble right now, but I do think that with how much they've struggled, kind of the negative, I think, attitude about the Blues and Binnington and the frustration and Hoffman, and there's just been so much negativity around it. I think you could get Tarasenko for pretty cheap, and I think he's really unsustainably low.
Yep. That was my last one as well, so I'm out.
Oh, that was my last one too, so we're out. Okay. There you go. Quick and
I'll move to Sustainably High.
Unsustainably High.
Regularly Sustainably High.
Regularly Sustainably High. I think you have. I think you probably have one or two of my guys, so I'll let you go first.
Well, I'm going to go back to Colorado. No, I'm kidding. No more Colorado. I'm mercifully done with them.
Would you say that Nathan McKinnon guy is Sustainably High?
No, I think they all suck. Yeah, and probably. Colorado is actually the worst team in the league, and we're all being hoodwinked.
Also, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a helicopter that seems to be directly above me right now, and I don't know why, but it's very loud, so I apologize if you can hear it.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Anyways.
I'm going to go to Pittsburgh, actually, and move into Jared McCann. Now, McCann's on here because he is benefiting the most due to Malkin not being, alive. That said, it comes with a little bit of limited upside in that he's still not getting a huge amount of ice time, but he is seeing a good amount of top power play, and he's getting production on that power play. Now, it's to be seen what happens with Zucker. Now that Zucker's back, I could see him eating into McCann's power play time, but it is hard to argue with the production that McCann has put up here. It's also kind of hard to argue that it's totally sustainable. So he's on here with like a big asterisk in that he's better than he was. That doesn't mean he's going to sustain this pace. Obviously, he's not going to be a 120-point player or whatever. But I think that he's in a better situation. So naturally, we should see an increase in points. I think that makes him probably a 55-point pace player, maybe a 50 to 55-point pace with maybe some power play points coming. So that still doesn't make him super attractive in most leagues. But given the fact that he's willing to shoot the puck during the stint of being the second line center, he can have some value in leagues that are looking for, a hot hand and hoping for the best for the next couple of days.
So my next one here is someone that you talked about and said it was a long-term target, and I totally agree. And he's turned into just a beast, is Jason Robertson. Kind of an interesting story for him because he actually lost weight in the offseason. He had a big thing about losing. I forget how much it was. I think it might have been like 40 pounds, or 20, 40 pounds. It was a big deal. Not a small amount. And he changed his stride as well. Put in a lot of work, and it is paying off for him. And in my opinion, he is sustainably high. I mean, it's tough because we don't have a lot to go off on him. And he's such a different player than he was in the past, with all the changes he made to his game. And so it's hard to know what his ceiling is. And right now he's operating on kind of like a near point per game pace. And the thing is, that's not so crazy.
It really doesn't seem crazy.
It really doesn't.
The
seem
crazy
that crazy
thing is that it doesn't seem crazy.
Yeah, that's the nuts thing is, it doesn't seem that nuts right now. His secondary assist rate is low. His IPP is high. I'll give him that. It's at around 70%, and that is high. But he is playing with really good players. I don't. I
can honestly make the argument that it should be higher.
Yeah,
which is insane.
I'm pissed that I didn't get in on Jason Robertson.
Because he's only starting to get the power play upside like recently.
Yeah.
So, and now that he's starting to cash in on the power play, like that's where his point spike is coming from.
Yeah.
He was doing what he was doing for the rest of the season, but now he's adding power play points to his total. And he's skating 20 minutes a game.
Yeah.
I'm
disappointed.
He could legit be a point per game or even better
for the rest of the season. It's insane.
It's insane. He's very, very good, and he shoots like a crazy person. Yeah. Three or four shots a game.
It's insane. I mean, whatever changes he made to his game this offseason really worked because he's a whole new player.
Yeah, he doesn't hit at all though.
No hits.
Boo. Nope. Boo, Jason.
Nope. Hit people. What are you doing?
Hit people. Please help me out here so we can like you more. It's so difficult to recommend somebody that shoots as much as you do, but hits 10 times a season.
When you're looking at Ryan Reeves or Jason Robertson, it's kind of tough.
Why not both? Okay. My last one here is UC Saros.
I had him as well.
So Saros is on here. I'm under the impression that he was probably playing part of the season hurt at this point. He looks totally different. Mm-hmm. He's playing much. I mean, you can't really expect him to be quite as good as he was over the last week or so, or 2 weeks, since he came back from injury. But he is playing a very improved game, and I don't think it's necessarily that the team is doing him any favors. I think that he has just been at the level that we hoped to get from him at the beginning of the season, just kind of didn't. So it's nice to see him rebounding a bit. I don't really see anything that shows me that he's going to slow down. Other than hopefully, the Preds stop letting in 40 shot attempts a game or whatever, or 40 shots on net a game. But besides that, it seems like his numbers should be pretty decent rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I had him as a long-term target this last week on Monday or Sunday rather, and I still see UC Saros as just a completely new player. It's insane. He just looks completely different. And I agree. I think we talked about it in the episode, I believe. That maybe he was playing injured, had a little bit of a theory there, but it's just nuts how different he looks now. It really is wild. Mm-hmm. My last one here is going to be Brian Rust on the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's weird because on one hand, he is really unsustainably high right now because he's playing on that Crosby wing, and Crosby's just insane. But I'm also not someone to bet against Crosby. He's someone I want to be very careful of what I say because I could see people do rash things with him because for whatever reason people still I think haven't bought into Rust. So I feel like I need to be a little bit careful with him. But he's playing with Crosby and Gensel. He's on that top power play. Both of those are getting the majority of time because they really have nobody else. I mean, the second best line on Pittsburgh is Frederick Gaudreau, Zach Aston-Reese, and Sam Lafferty. I mean, if that's your second line,
it's a drop.
I'm playing Sidney Crosby, Rust, and Gensel all day, the entire game if I can. So I think Brian Rust, just from an exposure perspective to Crosby, and what we probably will see from them going forward and how much they need to rely on Crosby and that top line to do things, I'm high on Rust rest of season. His shooting pace is really, really solid. Sure, like I said, certain things look a little bit unsustainable when you look at the last 30 days and such. On the season, he's fine. It's not that crazy at the moment. And the thing is, too, his shooting percentage is actually crazy high, but his expected goals are pretty much right on. So, although it's crazy, it's also apparently not that crazy if you believe in the expected goal model.
Yeah. I don't have any more. So
no, me neither. So let's move into Sustainably Low, of which, honestly, I feel like I'm going to be a little bit repetitive with some of mine, but I feel like I need to because we keep getting questions on them and people disagree with one of them. I think you might have him too. So let's see. Who do you have?
Well, my first one is Joel Farabee.
Do not have him. But
he's been kind of in and out of this. He's been on Unsustainable a lot this season, just because I think that happens with new names where people don't recognize him. The problem is that Farabee, we're seeing his shots and his ice time dip kind of consistently at this point. And this was a concern I had with him going into, a lot of the Flyers coming back from COVID protocol and injuries and what have you. It took longer than I thought for it to really affect anything. And the funny thing is he actually has 100% IPP over the last 2 weeks, but hasn't gotten it on much. So there is some unsustainably low here stuff going on with him as well. But the biggest thing that I'm worried about is his lack of power play time. Need to see him and his shots. Those are the two things that I can't have a guy like Farabee who I need to be scoring me goals, shooting twice a game or once a game. He's actually shooting more like once a game right now. I need him shooting 2 or 3 times a game at least. Hits are nice, but that's not enough for what I'm getting out of here. So Farabee is sus low for me at this point.
Yeah, just it's weird. He keeps going. He keeps flip flopping between the two. It's weird. Yeah, I don't know what it is. So my first one, easy, Patrick Laine. I don't even want to get into why. I feel like I've had him here 3 weeks in a row. Every week I have people disagreeing with me, saying that he's going to turn it around. It's been a few weeks now, and I'm still waiting.
The only upside at this point is he gets traded.
Will the real Patrick Laine please step up? Because whoever is playing right now, apparently, according to a lot of people, is not Patrick Laine, but it is Patrick Laine. So I get that, we all want him to be this goal scorer, and I think that's what's happening here. Is a lot of people are saying, looking at past Laine and being like, well, but this can't be Laine. He scores a lot of goals. Why is he not? He has to do stuff, right? But it doesn't work like that. He has an 164 shot pace. It's just bad. It's all around. Everything is bad. And the thing is that the team, I don't believe in the team that's around him. And it's disappointing, too, when you see Laine have a 13% on-ice shooting, and he's involved in only 33% of the points.
Yep.
It's it's just disappointing. And
somebody trade for him.
So, and I don't think people are going to trade for him. I really don't think that happens.
You could be right.
I think that they hold on. I think that.
Well, maybe.
So here's the thing:
Columbus looks closer like they're going to miss the playoffs. There's no reason for them not to trade him unless he is going to resign.
Well, that's the thing is I think that they're going to sell him on the project of no torts. And I think they have a plan because it's the last year of Torts' contract. There's a very good chance. And here's the other thing I think. I think that if they look like they're going to miss the playoffs and the big thing that's holding Laine back from signing is they say, I don't like Torts. I think we might see them get rid of Torts early and bring in some interim, try to get Laine going, try something different, and hope he resigns or buys into a new project. I think that's their only hope of keeping him at this point, saying the season sucks. This isn't who we are anymore. Let's move forward. But yeah,
can they make playoffs?
I'm done with.
Obviously they statistically can, but
they
have not been good.
You know what's funny to me right now is that Bjorkstrand is who everyone wanted Laine to be. Think about that for a second.
They're very similar players,
they are.
So it's not too surprising. But okay, my last one, as I had Laine as well, is still in Winnipeg, is Neil Pionk, unfortunately.
No. It's true, but no.
So there's a couple reasons he's on here. The first is the ice time dip. But the most interesting and kind of most damning, unfortunately, is his deployment change.
Pain.
Last season, he was getting deployed in the offensive zone about 56% of the time. This season, it's 46%, but more recently, it's 35%, which means that ignoring neutral zone starts, he starts twice as much in the defensive zone as he does in the offensive zone. And what does that do to him, right? People are like, what's happening to his peripherals? Well, let's take a look. We're seeing his hits drop off, which was kind of weird, actually. I don't really know why that's happening. Yeah. But we're seeing the blocks increase, and that makes sense. If they lose a draw on the defensive end, it's much more likely Pionk's going to have to make a block than if they lose a draw on the offensive end. Going forward with that, his shots have decreased. Also not surprising, given the deployment. Harder to obviously take shots because they need to not only get into the offensive zone and then get set up. At that point, there's a decent chance he's going to be changing anyway. And then lastly, the power play. It's we kind of knew as soon as Morrissey started taking that share that it was going to be not so good news for him. He's losing about 11 points of pace just from the power play. So the fact that he's still keeping up with last season's point pace is pretty crazy, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to continue to see a drop off.
Yeah, I agree.
For the same reasons I mentioned around Gerard. I don't really see. I mean, luckily the Winnipeg second power play is pretty good and it gets decent ice time. Like 35 to 40%, which is higher than most teams. But I don't know that'll be enough to really support him to be a 50+ point getter.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, pace rather. On an 18
it's disappointing. I mean, I think I jinxed him for one, calling him a Norris candidate, and here we are now. Yep. I killed the lad. It's all my fault. I'll take credit.
You've done it.
It's me. I've done it. I've jinxed him. I've put the FHP curse on him. Okay, so I've got a few more here. You have no more. You said yes.
I have no more.
Okay, so I've got 3 more. Congrats or lucky all of you. You get to finish on 3 Gambie takes. We'll see how it goes. A nice laugh there. I heard that. Didn't escape me. I heard a little chuckle. My first one, Johnny Gaudreau. His best hope here is that he gets traded. That's it. Mm-hmm. I think on Calgary, you're looking at a 60-point player with no peripherals. That's it. That's who he is.
Yep.
It's disappointing. I mean, at this point, I've also got to wonder, who is Johnny Gaudreau? I don't get it. He had those fantastic seasons, and now this is going to be his second season in a row of sub 70-point pace. I'm confused, and I'm starting to get a little worried, honestly. And I think he needs a change of scenery. I think that's the number one thing he needs more than anything. My other one here is going to be Jordan Binnington on the St. Louis Blues.
No. All of my goalies.
All your goalies, yeah. Jordan Binnington. Well, we've gotten a lot of questions about him, and the one place he's struggling the most is his high danger save percentage. That's the thing that is really keeping him down. I don't really see it turning around right now. You're obviously holding. I think I'd be very selective with my starts. When it comes to Jordan Binnington, I'd be playing him against easier opponents. Although at this point, it's been pretty hard to really pick out the opponents. What's kind of crazy is that from an expected goal standpoint, he's actually doing decently well. It's not as bad as I thought. He's allowed 8 more goals than expected. Not great, but also not really as bad as I thought. He's been average. That's the thing, is he's been pretty average as a whole. He's crushing it at low danger save percentage. It's really that high danger that's killing him. So, this kind of comes back to that discussion of average goaltenders just aren't really worth it in fantasy anymore. And that's something that we might have to, consider and think about. And in that same vein, I move over to Jacob Markstrom, another Calgary player. I don't think you have him in any leagues, so you can rest easy there.
I don't.
Pretty much the same story, honestly. Almost exactly the same story as Jordan Binnington. Very bad high danger save percentage, very good low danger save percentage. But he's allowed 14 goals more than expected, so he's definitely underperformed way more than Jordan Binnington has, and been probably equally as frustrating and disappointing, because he's also had some really great games in there, similar, honestly, to Jordan Binnington at times. And Jordan Binnington, in my opinion, has a much harder role. He faces more rebounds against per game than Jacob Markstrom, about a whole rebound against more per game, as well as the average goal distance is a lot closer, so he gets a lot more difficult workload than Jacob Markstrom does. But regardless, and on top of that, you add in that the Flames are a complete mess of a team. I just don't think he's going to be the goalie that you probably expected him to be. And from a turning it around perspective, this is where it gets hard now to talk about what it means for a goalie to turn around. Because on one hand, could he turn it around? Sure. Is turning it around being average and still not worth it, or still not flashy? Probably. That's turning it around in their books. In the books of Jordan Binnington, Jacob Markstrom, it's getting to about average, and that's good. Is it worth it to you? It really depends on your league. If you're in an averages league, probably not. If you're in a saves league that mostly counts just saves and wins, maybe. But from an average standpoint, I don't really see them getting back up to snuff. That is a phrase, right?
Makes sense.
Snuff. Getting back up to snuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was making sure. I didn't know if I was too young to use that and had no idea what I was saying there. I've heard it in books.
I mean, it could be.
Heard it in books. Gotta figure out which books I'm listening to. So, anyways, that is your show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate each and every single one of you that tune in and listen and give us your ear holes for some minutes. We will be back on Friday for the weekend preview and 10 takes.
Yep. Thanks for listening.